I can't make a good video because I did my clutch a long time ago, so I'm just going to use pictures. Everybody knows this is your primary, this is your secondary. I'll go through pieces that you should check when you have it apart. Here's the cover on a primary. See this brass coloring through here? It should actually be a grayish white color. When you see a lot of brass like this, that bushing in the cover is bad and needs to be replaced. This is the main bearing. I got the clutch seat, the sheave is on this side. There's a spacer, and if I right here you'll see a shim. There's one on each side of the bearing. These are common to wear out, break, and disappear, and there's a lot of slop in the bearing, and it makes your clutch not work. It makes part of the engagement almost act like the main bearing's going out. Usually that bushing only goes out when the bearing's bad anyway. Okay, here's the rollers on the spider gear. There's the roller, and there's a bushing on each side. And then you hear us talk about buttons. There's these plastic buttons on each side. And on the clutch tower, those wear here, and it keeps this piece sideways movement. These wear a lot. And then here's your clutch weight, and that's another wear area there. This roller flattens out a lot and sticks. I have a picture of that I'll show you later. Another thing to look out for. Here's a side picture. You can sort of see the curvature of the weight. Different weights have different type of curve. They're aggressive. It changes the speed the clutch shifts and the engagement, how fast that you go into high gear. And the bolt here also has there's a bushing in here on the weight. Those go out too. And here's the sheave pushed apart. Here's the main bearing, and you got to have a special tool to disassemble that to get to that. Here's the clutch sheaves pushed all the way together. You want to make sure that it does that. If there's a gap in here, there could be something binding up or holding it from closing, and that'll stop you from not getting your top speed. On the 08s, they had a plastic spacer in there, and it kept a 1/4 inch gap in there. And that's why they went slower. Now we're on to the secondary. Here's some rollers in the secondary, and you want to make sure these roll freely or have no flat spots on them. That's the front side. Here's the back side of the secondary. In that video you watched earlier, it didn't have this piece here. This is the helix. That's what does your engine braking. That one was a cheap piece of junk secondary, and they don't carry it. There's 4 torque screws. Make sure and put an alignment mark somewhere. You want to put this back on the same way you took it off. Here's the back side of the helix. These grooves and the angle are what control how much and how fast your engine braking comes on. You can get different helixes. You can even get helixes that don't have the engine braking in it. Here on the inside is 2 more rollers. There's the spring you're going to replace is underneath that. I've already taken the snap ring off in this picture. And there's the spring. And here is the gear that rides in there. It has a double index notch. This gear is sort of a pain to get back on, because as you push down on the helix and the spring, this gear turns. So you got to pre-index it a couple teeth ahead so it'll line up on the shaft. It's sort of a pain. Sometimes it takes a few tries. Here's some weights. This is an EPI weight. This is a stock weight. You can see how the difference of the back, the arch is. It's thicker here. Different weights in different spot control how fast, and also control like your top end. You can see the bushing in here. The stock weights just wear on the thing and wear out. Here's the helix with the rollers in it. You can see it's not a real tight fit. This thing rotates in here and moves. And that's how it works. And as the spring compresses and releases, Here's the shaft. Right here you can see the double index spline. I hate that thing. It's just such a pain. Okay, now here's a roller. This was on Mark's Razor S, and he had, as you can see, the bushings missing and a flat tipped roller, and it just flattened out, ruined the roller, and it also really ruined the weight. It just takes that back curve off. Now these are the buttons that were on that side piece of the Spyder. This one's cracked and broke. Wasn't worn a lot, but you can see how much thinner this one is. Here's the main bearing. Mark's had been in water, you can tell. His, that little washer that was in on the other picture, his was gone, and his main bearing was toast. His had a one-way bearing. The older ones have a two-way bearing. I like the two-way bearing. It cuts down on the engine braking, but the bearing's like a third the cost anyway. And I don't like engine braking. Here's a better picture. You can see all the pitting on his. It's not really a big, huge deal because the belt rides on it. It doesn't really hurt it. And his, the same thing. This bushing's wiped out. Real bad on his. It fit the shaft really, really loose. Here's some more buttons. These are out of my clutch. That is just so far worn out. And there's 6 of them on here. And that's the differences. I mean, some wear and some don't, but mine were toast. My bearing, this is my clutch. My bearing was a little shot and stuff, so I replaced it. Here's the sheave. After I took some sandpaper to it and cleaned it up really good, mine had a lot of score marks on it. Here's a new bearing on it, getting ready to put it back together. Here is the special tool, and then you have to have it in a holder, and that looses this little triangle thing, the Spyder, and it unthreads. And this thing's torqued like 200 foot-pounds. It's really tight. And here it is all the way back together, getting ready to install it. Here's the clutch puller tool. I just left it in when I took this picture. I left it in. I was acting like I was taking it off. You can see new spring in there, new buttons, new weights, new bushings in the new rollers, new bearing. So that's pretty much about it.